Oh, what's good, G-Life? It's your boy, MC Shadow, back at you with another video. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. That is how you help my channel get into the algorithm. I would highly appreciate if you go ahead and do that. You know what I mean? It's absolutely free. You're on my channel. How? Don't forget to check out my second channel, Man in Society, M.O.D. We talk about stuff outside of the streets. It's a little bit dark. You know, we're still at work, right? But I got hit up, and I told this individual I was going to do a video, right? But I completely slipped my ass, so decided to bring it right here. Which he said... He often thought that the oldest gangs, were, in New York, but then he hears that, in Texas, and he hears Los Angeles, and he hears this and that, right? And he said, if by any chance do I know where the oldest gang is located or where it originated from, right? That's a little tough of a question, right? Because exact years are not actually known, right? People could say New York because of the 40 Thieves, which is, a gang that was, documented, and it has been around since the 1800s, right? But then again, so has the gangs in California, right? Like Dogtown, Alpine, and Macy's, and gangs like that have been around since the 1800s. But then you also have barrios like the outlaw Tejanos, who have been around since the 1800s from Texas, right? And Chicago, they come a little bit later. Their first gang doesn't pop up to roughly around like 1910, 1920, roughly around that year, which is still a long time ago. Don't get me wrong, right? So exact years are not actually known, right? And the thing is, that's a more fascinating thing about this, right? Is that back then there was no form of communication or for individuals to know of each other, right? Yet gangs were sprouting out all over the place without any awareness of each other, right? Because it wasn't like it was out on TV or it was being, publicized, you know what I mean? There was no way of people knowing what was going down in each other's, I mean, you had newspapers and stuff like that, but it really wouldn't cover this kind of stuff, right? But yet you had these groups that were starting with the same mentalities, throughout all of, besides the world, but, here in the United States, right? And obviously, some of the areas that are home into is, California, New York, Chicago, and Texas, right? Due to the population, the size, and, big city living, right? Big city living is going to come with big city problems. You know what I mean? When you have the rich clashing with the poor, it's definitely going to create tensions, in poverty. Where you find poverty, you'll find gangs, right? And as long as you have poverty, you'll forever have gangs, right? Sad reality. Anywho, so it's kind of hard to say, where exactly, or where, they sprouted, from, because they all came around roughly around the 1800s, you know what I mean? But like I said, exact years are not actually known. Now, but if you want to say Hispanic gang, Hispanic street gang, then yes, that is from California, right? Because in these other places, we're talking about Irish gangs, Jewish gangs, Anglo-Saxon, Celtics, Caucasian type of gangs, right? Right, because, I know it's a shock to believe, but gangs are not just a Hispanic thing. Nah, but there was a lot of Caucasian gangs before, a lot, right? That's why these Hispanic gangs started, right? In some of these areas, right? Because you had groups like if you really want to say which is the first gangs, well, yes, the white gangs were the first ones, right? But see, where it gets complex with that is that they don't consider themselves gangs, right? So I don't know if you want to label them as that. We could say that they were the first, right? But they, you have like the Ku Klux Klan and groups like that, right? But they don't consider themselves gangs, right? They consider themselves organizations and clubs and stuff like that, right? So, and people don't brand them as, the same as street gangs, right? So I don't know if you want to count that as a gang. If you want to count that as a gang, then yes, the white gangs were the first ones, and technically, then that means that they wouldn't have came from neither of these places, right? It would have originated from wherever those groups, originate from, But if we're talking about with the street aspect to it, right, graffiti and posting up in the corners and stuff like that, then yes, you would have these places, you know what I mean? And if you're talking about Hispanic, then yes, they originated out of here in Los Angeles, right? The northeast portion of Los Angeles, right? because those gangs were around. I know people sometimes think it's Maravilla or Waifas, but there's gangs that have been around, 20 years before those gangs were around. Um, you know, and those are facts. You know what I mean? But yes, these areas do have a lot of old, groups and gangs, to them. No doubt about that, right? Dating back to the 1800s, already a long time. Even though gangs have always existed, I made a video talking about that where they just evolve as time, because these crusades, pirates, and all of that, Vikings, barbarians, they were all technically considered gangs. You know what I mean? But I digress, right? If we're talking about like what modern day people, consider gangs, right? Then yeah, they spotted around roughly around the 1800s is when the first original gangs, came up. But overall, that's just my, opinion. What is you guys' thoughts? Leave it in the comments. Shout out, we out.